The James Show Podcast.
You know, we talk quite a bit about homeless people and what to do about the bottom rung of society here in North Texas. And my next guest, he actually blew my mind last week. And doing this for 23 years, it's kind of hard to do that. But he brought up something that I had just never thought of before and I'd never heard anyone say before. His name's Monty Bennett. He's a real estate guy, investor, but he also is the publisher behind the Dallas Express, and he is the guy, the driving force behind the HERO amendments that got passed last year. Welcome for your first appearance on the show, Monty Bennett.
Well, thank you, James. It's such an honor to be here. It really is. Big fan.
All right, so I forgot who else's show you were on. I like to pretend like other shows don't exist. But y'all were talking about what to do about the homeless here in Dallas and really all across North Texas. And you pointed out something that has made me think every day since. You said when you're walking around downtown, you see the homeless people. How many of them are Hispanic? And I'm not saying I've never seen a Hispanic homeless person, but it is exceedingly rare. Black people are far overrepresented. There's plenty of white people to go along with it. But you're right. Very few Hispanic people. Now, explain that, Monty.
Well, I think what it does is it's not talked about because it destroys the narrative of the far left. And that narrative is that these people are complete and total victims, and all of them are. And that just kind of happens to people. You'll also not see very many women down there at all either. And while these people need help, they need our help. And they are my faith calls us to help these people, and they need it mainly mental health issues, addiction issues. But you've got a big cultural things going on. You don't see Asians there either on the streets. You don't see South Asians. You don't see East Asians. And it's because, in my view, and what you see is that in the white culture and the black culture, it's that it's more acceptable to be out on the street. In the Hispanic culture, and my wife's Hispanic, it's much more family-centric. What's happened in our country for the past 50 years has been the destruction of the family. And so the family's not as cohesive. But in Hispanic cultures, it's still much more strongly cohesive. And if a relative is not doing well and needs help, well, it's a matter of shame to have that person out on the street. And so they'll bring them in the house and we'll take care of them. And they'll make sure they have help. And that's just not as prevalent in the white culture and black culture in this country. And so you just don't see very many Hispanics. And same in the South Asian and the East Asian cultures. They're just more family centric. And so that tells you that there's other components going on here. And then look at the men versus the women. You don't see very many women out on the street because unfortunately and sadly, they've got seriously bad things that can happen to them on the streets. They've got all kinds of reasons not to be on the street. They try a lot harder not to be on the street because of what can happen to them with assault and on and on. But that's just less of a concern with men. They are assaulted less because they are bigger and stronger. And so you see kind of a concentration of the representation of the people that are on the streets. It's mainly disproportionately white, black men. And so that tells you that there's a lot of other things going on rather than a lot of the narrative that you hear from the left about why people are on the streets.
And Monty, that rings so true with me because this is sort of my answer to some other these societal problems that we have. When it comes to crime, I like to point out, well, how many of these guys grew up without a dad? When it comes to people who are addicted to drugs or when they're living in grinding poverty or so many of these other societal metrics, I have found the solution, or at least the genesis of the problem, has been the lack of family formation, the lack of cultural importance on the nuclear family. And my wife's part Hispanic too. My mother-in-law's from a Hispanic family. She is one of 8 children. All right. So my suegra is one of 8 children, which means my wife has 7 aunts and uncles. And dozens of first cousins. And so
that's great.
And so how hard would it be for someone in that family to be homeless? Well, you would have to tick off everyone in that family. You'd have to tick off about 36 people to not have a couch to crash on. And it kind of blows my mind that I didn't think about that for homeless people as well.
Well, it kind of goes the other way too. Not only would you have to tick off so many people, but even if you just wanted to be homeless, and some people, it's true, just want to be homeless because they don't have responsibilities and on and on. Well, now you're ticking off people for shaming the family and bringing shame on the family. And so you're going to have 36 people after you, walking out to you, grabbing you by the ear and saying, all right, no, this is not a way to live. This brings dishonor to our family. And so there are, benefits to having, a large family and a lot of people that can take care of you and also get after you if you're not holding up your part of the bargain in your behavior in society. So, all right, Monty, I just thought it's interesting.
And so this is something that comes up, like, how do you solve homelessness, or how, you'll never get rid of all homelessness, but we can do better than this, right? Well, this is the same answer on how do we get rid of so many criminals? How do we get rid of so many people going to prison? How do we get rid of so much the addicts and prostitution and high school dropouts and educational achievements? And on so many of these social issues, these societal issues, the answer would be the restoration of the traditional nuclear family. And it kind of blows me away on how people fight against that. But here we are. So continuing with Monty Bennett, how do we make this happen? Okay, we've established one of the problems is lack of a familial safety net. How do we get back to the nuclear family tradition that this country was built on, Monty?
Well, in my case, I believe the right answer is through faith. And I have a strong faith, and Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And God is the creator of this world and this universe, and he encourages the family, and that's the units through which he has the world operate and his preferred way of doing things. And our culture has just gotten away from that whole thought, away from God, away from the family as the right way to organize ourselves. And instead, we've tried to insert the state as the organizer of people rather than the family. And it's led to all these social crimes and disasters that we see. And anyway, it needs to be reversed if we want to save our society.
Yeah, and I don't want to say like all of this social spending that we have incentivizes people to be homeless, but it does make it a little easier to be homeless. And for people who are out in the suburbs or even country people like me, unless you've been in the city for a while and kind of looked at this, you don't understand that some of these people prefer to be homeless. They could go to a shelter right now and have a bed. But if you go to a shelter, you can't do drugs, you can't drink, you've got to follow rules, and they're not even really homeless as much as they seem to be just sort of outdoor urban enthusiasts.
Yeah, or you can call them vagrants. If some people are just vagrants, they just want to live on the streets. Not all, but some. And some definitely have addiction and mental health problems that need help. One thing that is amazing that I see out there, which is so terrible, is the far left takes the view that we should do whatever these people want. And that is, if they want a needle to inject something in their arm, give it to them. If they want to walk through the streets in the middle of the streets days, then let them do it. And coming from a family of addiction and it being a problem and being experienced in it all, the first thing you learn, usually the hard way, is that you don't give an addict what they want. In fact, the worst things I've done in dealing with addicts is doing what they asked me to do. And boy, are they convincing, but you don't. You have to give them. Someone defined love once as doing the good of another, regardless of cost. And in this case, that means not giving an addict something that they want. What they need is treatment. And if they're not willing to get treatment, well, then consequences need to ensue. But part of the problem is the idea that we should just turn our neighborhoods over to anybody that wants to convert public property to private property. And we know that that's not proper. There's private property and there's public property. And by living on the streets, you are converting public property to private property. And that's what should not happen. So people need to either go in and get some help or they need to go someplace else, because converting public property into private property is not appropriate.
So it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of solutions that can be found through government. And when we talk about this on previous shows, I suppose we could stop subsidizing single motherhood, with the welfare system set up the way it is, with, the public housing in Section 8 and the food stamps and the cash assistance. There's a little bit government can do, but that just seems to be part of the solution. And I think what kind of turns a lot of people off is the fact that there's not a government solution. You can't just take tax money and put it in a program and not have to worry about it. We as a society are going to have to get our hands dirty and deal with this if we want things to get better. And I don't think people like that. I think people like the idea of, I'm paying taxes, just let the government deal with it.
Well, we definitely need to be involved. Absolutely, we need to be involved, our churches, ourselves. But there is more that the government can do. For example, is that what the government can do is create situations where it's not so convenient for people to be on the street. There needs to be pressure to put people that are on the streets. We shouldn't allow homelessness to be in places where people like to live their lives, where they conduct commerce, where they live, and the like. And it's not fair to the people that conduct commerce there or live there. And we need a police presence. And these people need to get out of these areas and go get the help that they need, and in some cases deserve. So the government can play a role, and in many cases they're just not. They're not following the law. They're not cleaning up encampments. They're not forbidding encampments. They're not doing things about them. They're not putting pressure on homeless folks. Actually, I got to give some props to the city. They started a plan here in June called something like Save Our City or Safer City or something to really focus on the homeless issue downtown, and it has improved. It's still not where it needs to be, but it has improved. But it just goes to show you that government can help and can play a role if they're focused. But right now, by and large, they're not.
All right. Well, hey, it was a good chat. We'll have to have you back on. And I want to say a big fat thank you for being the publisher behind the Dallas Express. I use it almost every day on the James Show. So thank you. This is Monty Bennett, y'all.
Well, thank you very much, James. Appreciate it. And Dallas Express has grown like crazy, and appreciate all the subscribers out there. So thank y'all.
Yeah, go check it out, DallasExpress.com.
The James Show Podcast.